We have the REAP program, REAP program, a community-based model for concussion management. Our speaker today is Scott Collins. He is the CBIS branch manager, Brain Injury Services-TBI Trust. Scott serves as the Brain Injury Services Manager for the Department of Aging and Independent Living in Frankfort, Kentucky. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott, and we'll start with the presentation.
Thanks, sir. You'll have to forgive me. LASIK surgery is great, but I can't see anything close up anymore, so I'll be going back and forth. It's been an interesting morning for me. Pulled in the parking lot, the school started calling and said my kid wasn't there. I said, I called him back. I promise I dropped her off. You need to find her. I don't know where she's at. I'm texting her. She texts back. I promise I'm here, Dad. She's only in 8th grade, so find my kid, right? But I guess they found her. And then her mom is in Vermont right now, and she's texting me, where's Hadley? I don't know. I dropped her off, but she's not there. But yeah, what a morning, right? I thought, okay, I'm gonna have to go find my kid at school. And then, you get the text. I'm here, Dad. Yeah, sure you are. But I appreciate the chance to get to talk to you a little bit about REAP especially, but I'm also going to do a brief overview of what the trust fund does and who we are. Like Mr. Sparrow said, we are part of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and we work in the Department of Aging and Independent Living in the Brain Injury Services branch. That branch consists of me, and that's it. So I don't know why we have a whole branch, but we have case managers throughout the state, but we are all hybrid. So I go to work in Frankfort once a week now. So I don't know why I have to go once a week, but they tell me I have to. So how should we do this? So we do use a particular definition for brain injury in terms of who we serve and what we look for. This is just a brief definition of it. We've used this definition since 1998. We are looking to see if it's something that we may need to switch around a little bit. Sometimes it does change. And so we try to use what the National Association of State Head Injury Administration uses, which is called NASHIA for short. But that's the definition of brain injury. And also I see on here that I'm on here for an hour. You're going to get a break because I don't think I can do this for an hour, but we'll try our best. But we were created in 1998 by the Kentucky General Assembly. We have 2 programs in the trust fund. We have our regular trust fund, and then we have a small behavioral program trust fund. And when I say small, it's very small. We typically are serving about 500 to 600 people with either paid services or just case management in the regular trust fund. And in the behavioral program, we have 5 participants. It's very costly for that program. And I'll try to talk a little bit about that too in a second. We are, like every funding source in the state, it seems like, a payer of last resort. We will and try to offset some cost. If maybe you're getting a waiver through Medicaid and you can't get respite in your waiver, we will try to come in and help with respite if that's something you need. Do you interface with the military? We do. We will. A lot of the folks that come for us that were in the military, they get services through the VA or something like that. So yes, we definitely do have. What about National Guard? If military service is military service for us. I mean, if they're in the National Guard, we would definitely. Well, yeah, there's a difference between the benefit structure. Yeah, so we will. I mean, and we definitely, like I said, just like with waiver, we can offset. And we will offset. That payer of last resort, it's a weird word for us because we definitely will offset things that are in other things. And for sure, ask questions, just yell out. That's fine with me. So our trust fund services are only for folks that are in their homes. We don't serve anybody that's in a residential setting that's getting paid for by something else. So if you had a waiver, you're living in maybe a neurorestorative house, we can't serve them because our whole trust fund is set up to try to keep people in their communities. and in their households and with their families. The behavioral program's a little different. Those are residential services. Those are folks that have brain injury, something happens in their life, they go on some kind of behavior and they need help. And so they can do in-home services where they'll get therapy throughout that. Our trust fund has a 9 board member. It's all governor appointed. We do have an advisory board with 24 people on it right now, I think, and it is all persons with lived experience. So those are folks that have had brain injuries. That's just something new that we've started through a grant with ACL, and it's been really beneficial to us because we're hearing firsthand what they need in terms of services. I actually can see this. This is great. We're funded through DUI fines and circuit clerk court cost. So we get 16% of DUI fines in the state. Those are split straight down the middle. Part goes to our trust fund, typical services, and then part go to the behavioral program services. It's restricted, it's limited, so we don't get any kind of state general funds, we don't get any kind of federal funding. So all free thing we do is through those DUI fines. So we always joke around during COVID, nobody was out, nobody was drinking and getting caught. So our funding went down dramatically during that period, but it has gotten back up to where it was generally. And just an example of the funding, I mean, split down the middle, one trust fund, our typical trust fund serves 600 people, our behavioral trust fund serves 5 people. So that just gives you an example of how costly that behavioral program is. It's anywhere from $450 to $750 a day for those participants. So we're trying to do some different things with that to make it more of a triage service, that someone goes into a behavior, they go into that program, they get 6 to 9 months of intensive therapy, and then they go back home or to the residence they were at. The problem is with that program, these 5 people have been in it for over 15 years. So they kind of get lost in those programs. Our services for the trust fund, we do case management, free case management, doesn't cost anything, there's no fees. A lot of community residential services, that could be homemaking, that could be personal care, that could be respite care. Somebody comes in to give their primary caregiver a break. We are different than waiver. We do not pay family members or anyone that lives in the house. So it could be a family friend, it could be through another service, but we were regulated in the beginning not to pay family. So when that happens and if somebody's want to be paid, we always try to refer them to HCB waiver, SEL, Michelle P, something like that, that family member can be paid to stay home with their loved one. We pay for therapy that insurance wouldn't pay for, or more therapy after what insurance allows. We pay for that a lot. We do pay for structured day. Our next biggest thing is probably home modifications, a lot of bathroom remods. In our program, you can get $15,000 a year, $60,000 in a lifetime. $15,000 does not go a long way toward home modifications anymore, especially bathroom remods. So we try to do those as cost effective as we can. I will say that when our program was at one time contracted outside of Dale, and then that program was brought in-house just so that we could be more cost effective with our monies. We hope that nobody ever reaches that $60,000 lifetime maximum, because we get them something that's going to be more long-term successful for them, whether in a waiver or they don't need us anymore. That's the greatest thing in the world, is when a family calls and says, we don't need you anymore, we've got everything we need. But our case managers have done a fantastic job of making the money stretch. And what I mean by that is there was at one point, there was a 3-year waiting list just to get paid services through us. Now it's 3 months, and it's only 3 months because we do our allocation services quarterly. So that's why it's 3 months. They've done a great job in making sure people are getting what they need and not going over with what they may say they need, I guess I should say. And we have great case managers. Like I said, we have 9 case managers. We have 8 right now. We're hiring another one. We had a lady that retired. all across the Commonwealth. We have 2 in Louisville because that is our biggest influx of referrals come from the Louisville area. So we have Western Kentucky, South Central Kentucky, Eastern, Central, Northern, and then kind of North Central is what I would say, but that area. Most of our referrals do come from rehab facilities, Cardinal Hill, Fraser, Sky in Bowling Green, and then it's escaping me, the rehab facility in Northern Kentucky. What is it, Shell?
In where?
Northern Kentucky.
Gateway?
Gateway sends us a LIPO. You can do self-referrals. Our referral process is really easy. It's not a doctor's referral. If anybody can fill it out, it's their personal information. And then we need their medical records to prove that they have a brain injury. Once that's done, you get a case manager. And then that case manager will work with you on what kind of services that you're needing. This is just an example of how our funding works. And one thing that I truly love about our trust fund is we are service driven. You can see the green is the money that comes in, the blue are the services that we pay out. We are 100% service. And then you can also see typically our services, we bring in between $1.3, $1.4 million a year through that funding. If you look in 2022, you'll see that our services were actually more than what our funding was. That's because we did get some COVID relief money that we were able to use services for. And so we had more, so we did more. And that's what we try really hard to do. To be in the trust fund, legal resident of Kentucky, you have to have a medically documented brain injury. That brain injury has to have happened after birth. Anything that happens pre-birth or during birth would not qualify for our trust fund. We don't have any income level barriers for the trust fund. We don't ask about your income. We just know that people need help. We are typically the first person that these families are reaching out to after their loved one is brain injured, whether it be right out of rehab or whether it be they're still in the hospital and they're calling around trying to see what they can get to help them. Would not qualify for us, of course, if you're in a nursing facility or have a level of care nursing facility needs. Spinal cord injuries, dementia, Parkinson's, any kind of neurological condition that's degenerative and is progressively getting worse, that wouldn't qualify you for our program. This is our information. That cell phone number has 4 numbers coming into it, and it all rings to my phone. So if you call the trust fund, you're gonna get me. And then we're gonna go from there. That's our email address. I did leave some brochures out on the table. So if you wanna take those, that have all our information in them. Our referral link, it is an online referral. Like I said, it's really easy. A red star for what we have to know. Everything else we don't need to know. But those come straight to me. They're put into our system. Our data system at this point has over 7,000 people in the Commonwealth in it. So in the years that we've done, we've tried to help over 7,000 people. So we're known, getting more well known, it seems like. So that's where we are. Medical records, we do not accept neuropsychological medical records for diagnosis, and that's spelled out in our regs. And then this is just about our referral process, discharge. If you get up to if you go over your $60,000, you're discharged or you don't need us anymore. There is a process for getting a service. We have a committee that reviews all of our service plans. So, sometimes they're denied, not typically. Our case managers do a really good job of, if it's a service that they know that's needed, that we can approve, it'll make it on our list. Otherwise, it's not even gonna get that far, so it's not gonna get denied. We have had denied in the past. Those can be appealed, and there's an appeal process, of course. This is just a little more about the behavioral program, what I've already talked about. We're not gonna go real deep into that. It is targeted case management. We pay one-on-one. We work with New Vista in Lexington. And they have it's called Ashland House. It has 3 individuals in it. We have an individual in at Touchstone in Conroy, Texas. And then we have an individual that's in neurorestorative in Carbondale. And those two individuals, unfortunately, their behaviors are so much that they can't really be supported in Kentucky. And that's something we're working on too. I get calls every day from people that, you know, we need help, we need help, we need help. And Kentucky doesn't have the facilities for that. We're not made for that yet. And unfortunately, our behavioral program that we do have in Kentucky, we don't have the funding to be more than what it is. It's 3 beds and a respite bed. The respite bed doesn't honestly get used a lot because that would just be for weekends for folks. And typically those folks are already getting some kind of respite care through something else. But that's our behavioral program. We're working, like I said, to make it more of a triage service. But we've worked really hard to get the individuals into FHL houses or residential services. Problem is, people hear brain injury and they see that and they're done. They don't want to do anything else. So it's been difficult. The qualifications are the same for the behavioral program in terms of medical documentation. That's my information. If you do ever want to email me, it's donald.collins, not Scott. For some reason, the state told me I couldn't be Scott, so I don't know. But that is our trust fund. And now I have another one, if I can find it.
Hey Scott, so while you're transitioning, so what is your primary age groups that you will service through the regular TBI Trust Fund?
Primarily,
What are the injury mechanisms that you are most often reported that resulted in their traumatic brain injuries?
right, I'll go backwards here, y'all. We will serve anyone birth until death. Primarily, it's probably going to be 35 to 60 is probably our largest, we call them clients. I get yelled at for how I'll go to a conference, I'll call them a survivor. Don't call us a survivor. And so, but it's typically about that 30 to 60, 65. So that's typically what we serve. We do have some younger folks, but typically they're going to get a waiver quicker than the, it's unfortunate, but yes, sir.
I didn't catch all of it, but can you go over if you do or do not do home modifications?
We do home modifications.
My second question on tied to that is your caseworkers, do they have people that they know that somebody could be referred to get home modifications?
Yes.
So
yes.
If we're needing a home modification for somebody that didn't qualify, would they be able to help us?
Yeah, they could help you.
To some people that do that?
Yeah, we do have some of our case managers that work in our more rural settings of Kentucky, and they have contractors that we primarily use all the time. We keep them busy. Most of our home modifications are bathroom remods, but we'll build ramps. We'll replace flooring in someone's house that's a trip hazard. We'll take carpet out, put hardwood flooring in for them. We'll widen doors for someone that's in a wheelchair. We have in the past, we pay for medical equipment in terms of, diapers or chucks or something like that that maybe they need. We've paid for BINS devices in the past. If anybody's a therapist in here, BINS devices are something that stimulates the muscle. They're typically used for therapy, but then we do have some folks that find that they use them throughout the day and it makes it easier for them to do things. They're quite expensive. So we have a case manager now that's trying to see how we could buy, and I don't know what it's called, but it's like a full skeletal bodysuit. It's $100,000. So I don't know how he thinks we're going to pay for that, but he likes to talk about it. But a lot of ramps. We've put elevators in folks' houses from garages into the house. We've done all kinds of outside the box. We try to use people that work in the state too. We try to keep those funding with our state. Yes, sir.
This is an interesting conversation. You and I should have met a long time ago. My name is Dick Bartlett. I am the state's trauma coordinator for Dr. Stack. In other words, I'm the front end of this system, you're the back end of the system. If my part of the system fails, then they become your problem, okay? We need to talk. But I'm curious as to why, since the brain is attached to the spinal column, and so many of the cases that my folks are seeing in trauma centers are falls of one nature or the other, why aren't you dealing with spinal cord injury? Why have you eliminated that as part of your does not include list?
I wish that I had a long, drawn-out, wonderful answer for you. I will say that's how our regs were written in the beginning, when it was advocated for. And it probably honestly has to do with what our funding will allow us to do. And if we brought that spinal cord injury into that, and it's not a brain injury, like we talked about, it's not a traumatic brain injury, then it would, I don't think we would be able to serve nearly the people that we can now. And hopefully there's other places that can, but I will always revert to, that's how our regs were written, not a lot we can do.
We need to talk because we're trying to figure out, I was given in 2008, when my system was created by the General Assembly, a program without money.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been dealing with this through voluntary systems, through donations, through foundations. We tried to do a super speeder like Georgia's got last year, and that got shot down by some concerned legislators in Western Kentucky who didn't want our people to be taxed and, you know, whatever. We're gonna go back after some funding. We've got to have funding to support the trauma system, and our part of it also includes some education. If we could, and Georgia gets and millions and millions, you know, like you, but more, plus,
Right.
from the super speeder program. And our thought was, if we could figure out how to fund the trauma system, obviously, you could potentially, I know you already get funding, we don't. We're
Right.
But, you know, I would think that since we're gonna be looking at injury prevention and some of that kind of stuff, that our programs might be able to coordinate down the road, and we could figure out how to expand this thing, but,
And you know, preface, if they have a brain injury and a spinal cord injury, we will serve them. The spinal cord injury isn't just going to kick them out. If a lot of times spinal cord injuries are kind of in the diagnosis of a brain injury, but it's not. So does that make sense? I mean, I'm not a doctor. I have an English degree and a psychology degree and a master's in children's ministry. So I am perfect to talk about this, right? But you know, that's definitely, we can get together, we can talk. I mean, I mean, if that could get funded somehow through, you know, who knows? I mean, we could definitely work together and make sure that more, you know, I'm very service driven. That's probably why I am in the job that I'm in now. I really like to help people. So I see this as a way to capitalize on the service-driven life that I have, and it takes money to do this part of it. So I think that's why I've been here 10 years. I will tell you that all of our case managers, except for the one that just retired, have been with us over 15 years. Nobody's left. So we like what we do. Yes, sir.
I work mainly on the revenue side of education, and I was wondering, since your age group, that your clients was between 35 and 60, major age group, what do your statistics show as the major cause of these brain injuries?
For us, it's typically going to be a car accident, a fall, or stroke victim.
Is one of those three, what was the major?
What's the major one? Car accidents. Yeah. We have typically, I mean, and you know, I don't have it right off the top of my head. I'm saying that's what I think it is, but
It was cut in half a seatbelt. It was 40%, now it's not 20%.
Yeah. So, you know, and we do see quite a few stroke victims. Anoxic injuries would be very high on the list of folks that we do. We were one of the primary programs that would help with that in the past. But I would say we do, you know, a lot of car accidents, falls, and then anoxic injuries.
Assaults and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Is there an exception for people who are inebriated at the time or under the influence of drugs?
No.
Because I know there are some other places.
No, we don't care. I mean, if you have a brain injury, you have a brain injury, unfortunately. How you got that makes, doesn't do anything in terms of what we can provide for you. Yes, ma'am?
Scott, Chelsea from Psychologist, Kentucky. I'm just curious, do you know if you are serving any victims of abuse and trauma, like shaken baby?
We are, yes, ma'am. Not a ton. I would probably say of the 600 people that are active right now, probably 5 or 6. But yes, we have served them. And like I said, I've said triage quite a few times. We hope that we're the first person people come to. We hope we get them in something more long-term that they'll never see us when they actually get to that $60,000 maximum. And then, I will say our case managers, I talk glowingly of our case managers. They still talk to folks that just call them we're not providing them anything anymore, but they do. But we do serve shaken baby, especially, is something that we hear quite a bit. Yes, sir.
Do you serve individuals with psychological disorders that may have caused brain injury?
Yes,
or they
yes.
have one from the brain injury?
We do, and what we'll see a lot is that someone maybe has some kind of psychological issue that's in their life, maybe not as pronounced. They get a brain injury and it just is 10 times worse. But yes, we do serve those
Also in
folks.
those situations, severe autism and head banging. I didn't know if that was something that you all...
If they're autistic, they get a brain injury that wasn't it's after birth, we will serve them. Yes, sir. And we've built fences for folks in the past that maybe their child has a brain injury and they like to run off. We've built fences around their yard so they can stay in, make sure they get out. Anything else about the trust fund before I move on to REAP? That was great. REAP. I don't see make the page bigger, so we'll just leave it like this. REAP is a concussion protocol that the trust fund has been working on for at least a year, getting our book finished so that we then can take it out to the state. It's something that we've been talking about for probably 3 years. It's a concussion protocol that was created in not Denver, but in Colorado by a doctor named Karen McAvoy. Dr. McAvoy was a school psychologist in a system where a football player got a concussion in a football game, went undiagnosed. Next game he gets hit, he dies from second impact syndrome. The school system was so affected by that they developed a protocol for kids and concussion. Now, a lot of what we hear when it comes to concussion is athletics, return to play, right? The beauty of this program, although I will say it is return to play forward, it is for any kid who has a concussion. That kid could have been riding their bike and they fell because they didn't have a helmet on. Or maybe they did have a helmet on, they still got a concussion. They jumped up in their dad's van like I did when I was little and hit the top of it and got a concussion, right? Your brother or sister hits you in the head with something and you got a concussion. This protocol is for all those children. It's not for just the kid that got hit on the soccer field, got hit on the football field, and needs to get back on the football field or soccer field. It's for everybody. And that's why I like it so much. REAP, it stands for remove, reduce, educate, adjust, accommodate, and pace. There's going to be a lot of talk about pace in this booklet. And let me also preface this, which you'll see, it says Kentucky logo here. We haven't got our final version of the book back yet. We will have logos and things like that in the book. There were some things in the book that some of our board members questioned, especially in terms of how much rest they're supposed to have. NASHIA is who this is through now. Again, the National Association of State Head Injury Administration. There is a movement that time has changed. The Congress that meets for head injury, I think it meets in Amsterdam, Hasn't met in 2.5 years because of COVID. They're meeting again in April, and they're probably, some of that's going to change. If that changed, National will automatically make changes to our book, and then we'll reissue that book at that time. Sorry. The REAP protocol is based on a team system. There's a family team, there's a school team physical, and then there's a school team academic, and then there's a medical team. Those teams work together to make sure that the child is getting what it needs in terms of return to learn, which means what's happening in the classroom in terms of pace, to make sure that that child's not going to further injure their brain. They're getting the time needed to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. The first part of this manual is how to use. Each team has a different thing that they're looking for in terms of where that it's at. And when we've been getting this book together, something that we've learned is it's very family team and school team. The physical part, I mean, of course, the doctors are going to be involved. The doctor maybe missed it.
You can increase the screen size a little bit, make it a little easier to see.
Oh, will.
Plus up at the top.
What am I missing?
Right here.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Just so people can see.
Is that better? Kind of takes the bottom out, but. Oh, there we go. Is that all right? Okay. And a lot of this is focused on family team. Who knows their kid better? Right? A school nurse, a doctor, or their parents, or their siblings. What do they see that's going on in them that something's not right? Right? How many times does a kid get a concussion, doesn't even know? I've got a headache. Right? They go home, their parents start to see something going on with them. That's when they go to the doctor. So that's what this is for. And you know, our hope is when we get the booklet together, we're making posters. Those posters are going to have QR codes on them. Those posters are going to be in health departments, emergency rooms, rehab, physical therapy places. And that way you click on it, it takes you straight to the book. And then that family can either maybe go to the school. And of course, we want to get these into school systems too. We wanted to get our book ready before we start that process because you never know how that's going to go. But there's a family team, a school team physical, which would be coaches, trainers, school nurses, things like that. And then the medical team would be either the emergency department, family doctor, whoever they're working with in terms of that concussion. There's some just myths in here, true or false. I mean, how many of us heard all our lives, if you have a concussion, don't go to sleep, right? Not true. I mean, right? So that's just some of the things that are, you know, just for a family to see when they first take this home. There's just some more, did you know in here? 70% of concussions resolve over 4 weeks. There is part of this protocol, if there are symptoms after that 4 week, that's when probably you need to go back to the doctor to see if something more is going on with that concussion. Maybe they need more time off, which we'll talk about more. Maybe they need, you know, I think, who's the Mississippi State football coach? He's crazy, but one of his guys got a concussion and he put him in a dark barn, like for all day. So they weren't in the light so that he'd get better quicker. You know, it's, you know, there's all kinds of myths out there with concussion. This book helps families know what those are and what they need to do, which we'll get into just a little more. And then throughout this book, you'll see, like at the bottom here, it says medical note from Misty Agnew from Fraser Rehab. We've got quotes throughout the book that are from individuals that work with concussion in the state of Kentucky. We've got physical therapist quotes, we've got doctors quotes, we've got neuropsychologist quotes, we've got quotes from a school counselor in our book. So it's folks that are actually dealing with these kids that are having these concussions at home. twice. This talks about the importance of each team. I've highlighted a couple. The school team coach, they have a role because they're in the very beginning of the concussion. They're the first persons to see it. They're the first persons to recognize it, the first persons to identify it. There is a legislation in our state that says every team has to have at least one coach that goes through a myriad of trainings. One of them is a concussion training. That is something that we hope to work on in our state, to get more concrete, maybe even law about what you have to have in terms of on your team, any team, and what they're looking for in terms of concussion. Or, I mean, I know that when I grew up, I played all the sports, right? Our athletic trainer, I grew up in Hazard in Eastern Kentucky. Our athletic trainer was a chiropractor. That's who came. So really, I mean, somebody got a concussion, well, we have known. Now that's been a long time. A lot of stuff had changed, but that's the kind of thing that we still see in rural Kentucky. I mean, the individual in the town who has volunteered their time to come to these games and stuff, it's not always a doctor. It's who they can get that's there. So, and then the next one, for the 1 to 4 weeks, and we talked about, typically 4 weeks is how long it takes to recover from a concussion. So that 1 to 4 week period is when these teams are watching your child to make sure they're getting the things they need, or they see something else that's going on in them that needs to be addressed. Maybe the teacher sees something mom and dad isn't seeing. They're not concentrating well in class. They remembered stuff always in the past. They're having problems with their memory. They're tired all the time, right? Which my kid said she takes a nap every day at school, so who knows? But they're seeing something in a kid that isn't what they always see. Because like I said, our parents and our school teachers, they're seeing these kids the most, and they know their behaviors. What in their behavior maybe is a sign that there's something else going on that needs to be looked at more closely, or they need more time. This is just a time frame based on each team of what they're going to be looking for in their child. You know, and what needs to happen. If you look at the orange, it's impose rest, assess symptoms daily. There's a worksheet that I'll show you in just a minute, and it's something they can do with their child daily to make sure their symptoms are getting better. It's something the teacher can do. It's something their trainer could do, something their coach could do to make sure that the child is progressing in what needs to happen for them to get back to full learning. That's how I look at it. I don't look at it as full play. Yes, that's important. Full learning is more important than getting back on that field. And I think it's interesting at the bottom, it talks about don't be afraid of symptoms. Symptoms are what concussions are all about. It's what you're typically going to see in them. Don't be alarmed if your kid is tired knowing they have a concussion. Be alarmed if it's more than what maybe happened at first. It's 3 weeks in, they're still tired all the time, they still have a headache, they're not really focusing well. That's when it goes further and you go back to the doctor. You say, hey, this is, especially after that 4 week period. And then this goes into the biggest concern with any kid with a concussion is it goes undiagnosed, it goes untreated, or it's diagnosed, we push them back, they get an injury again, it leads to second impact syndrome, which can lead to death. You never want to see that. That's the absolute, you know, and you know, that's the thing about this protocol. We're watching these kids so that doesn't happen. Especially, you know, how many kids, like I said, I played sports a long time. I wanted to be on that field, right? And these kids are the same way. We have a couple of quotes from folks that have had brain injuries and what it did. Mr. Fielder's one of them. But we have the second one's from a lady. She had 28 diagnosed concussions in high school playing soccer. She goes on to play soccer in college. She gets more concussions and finally is deemed, you can't play anymore. You're officially retired. And she talks about how many times she knew she had a concussion, but she wanted to play. And so what are their coaches looking for? You know, what are your family looking for? And it finally took an athletic trainer in college. She got a college scholarship to play soccer. She was good, probably why they kept pushing her out there, right? She got a scholarship and went to Western Kentucky. Finally, an athletic trainer looked at her and said, you can't play anymore. I mean, she's so lucky that this didn't lead to something worse. And even now, she says she sees a neurologist yearly. She has shakes. She can't concentrate. She never got her degree. Now she works for her dad. But luckily, she's still working and she's in a position that she can. So this book helps prevent that. It helps people to know what to look for. Or after the first concussion has happened, what do you see again that may have happened again? Soccer's a lot of concussions in soccer, I've learned. I'm not much on soccer, but whew. It talks about after a concussion, some of the things that you want to look for, what happens in the brain. It's a step process. I didn't know the first step, but step 2 is make sure everybody knows the symptoms that they're looking for, and they can talk about that. And then we see a transition back to school. And, you know, my daughter has talked about one of her friends got dropped from the pyramid at cheerleading and she got a concussion. And she was back at school the next day, like nothing happened. What maybe should that child be getting at school, whether it's pace, right? We learn for a little while, we take a break. And that's at home as well, right? Maybe not play video games for a couple of days. Or if you do play video games, you play for 10 minutes and not 3 hours. Rest is always important. Even in school, you have that child that's learning for 30 minutes, then maybe takes a break. Go somewhere away from everybody, it's quiet, their brain can get better. Whether it be the, school nurse comes in and says, and, we also, in getting this prepared, we've learned a lot that the school secretary knows everything about every kid at that school. So we want them to be part of this process. We want them to be on that school academic team, right? They see those kids. They see those kids coming in and saying, I'm sick, I've got a headache, or something like that. If they know what's going on, then maybe they see that symptom. Hey, maybe you need to take a break. Maybe we need to call mom and dad. You go home for another day. A lot of what I've read, it even says if it's concussion, 1 to 3 days before you even go back to school. So, every kid is different. It's just every kid's gonna my kid loves school, although obviously today I don't know where she's at, but she loves school. They were out for 2 days because of illness in Scott County, and she was mad the whole time. I want to go to school, and it's not to learn, just so you know. It's the social aspect. But do you see some kid who's so energetic all the time, and then all of a sudden, you hear, hey, they got hurt at the football game last night. The secretary hears it, and then you see them walking around school, and they're just kind of lethargic. Maybe something's going on. Maybe there's something we need to talk about. But it's all about, watching the children, and it's for, like I said, it's kids from preschool through senior year, right? This book is for all of those children. And then it talks about, I think quick enough. It talks about some of the cognitive problems that are post-concussion. These are the things that teachers really need to watch for. Like I said, are the student who learns so fast typically having a harder time in school. They just can't concentrate. They've got their head on their desk. How many times have we looked out into sometimes right now I'm looking in a glazed, what is he talking about, right? But how many times do we see that in our kids? We look out at them and those typically so into everything. They're just kind of in space. You know, what's going on? Maybe it's not just a concussion. Maybe there's something going on that we need to talk to the kid about. But what if it is an injury that has happened? And hopefully when they're seeing that, the teacher knows, hey, this kid had a concussion. This is the protocol that we're going through, right? And we're also selling this as, it's not something else a teacher has to do. It's another tool in their tool belt for all those kids in their class. And honestly, if you think about it, how many of these kids are they really going to see every year? You know, not that many. 1 or 2, maybe. Maybe that's a high number, but they've got it and it's there for them to use. I believe I went this long. This is just a symptom wheel talking more about the adjust, accommodate part for educators, and just some stuff that they would have to look for, you know, headaches, dizziness, light sensitivity, blurred vision, neck pain, noise sensitivity, and it just goes on to just some things that they can look for.
You're developing this book?
This book was already developed. They are taking the things that we've given them from Kentucky that's about our state, and then they cater the book to Kentucky's needs. Oh, that's a great question. Hopefully, we have the finished version of this book this month. They have everything that we have to get them. So we're just waiting on them to get it back to us.
What about availability?
It'll be available as soon as I can get it back and get it printed. I was going to talk some at the end, but I'll talk about it now since I can't believe I've gone this long. I'm sorry, it'll be a print. It'll live in digital form on our CHFS website, which is part of the trust fund. It will live part of what we're provided, and what we're going to get are 4 trainings, recorded trainings by Dr. McAvoy, which will go to each team. Probably we're not going to do one for the medical team. Does the medical team really need trained on how to deal with a concussion? I hope not. So we're going to do one that's an overall training, and then we'll do family team, school team, academic, school team, physical. And that way it can be shown in services. If a child gets a concussion, they can go to our website and they can click on that part, and they can watch the training for it. They can always call us, and they're going to be about 30 minutes. There's been a lot of talk about how long these training videos will be. She wanted to do an hour for each, and I said that is not going to work, because who's going to watch that for an hour? So we've got her down to 30 minutes. We've honestly wanted it to be about 20, because that's how long people are going to watch. I mean, that's just the way it is. But those training videos, and hopefully as part of that QR code, those videos will be attached to that too, in a way to get to those different things. So it'll be out there. It'll be out there a lot. We've talked about, this part talks about a lot about rest and how that research is being looked at right now. Sorry, I'm trying to. Oh, it'll have resources in it. Case-Band is a resource in our book. It has some different places: CHFS, Brain Injury Alliance of Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, and this is something, like I said, this isn't our last version. We've actually removed a couple of these and added a couple. So, but it'll have those resources on it for your kids. This is something I do want to touch on just a little bit, and it's the symptom text list. And it's, like I said, it can be done. It's got on here after the first 2 or 3 hours, family can do a checklist to see what's going on with their kid. 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. They can do it daily, and then they can do it weekly. At the point that these are zeros, then that's when you're starting to look for your kid to go back to full activity. If after 4 weeks you're still having some 3s and 4s, then that's when that medical team needs to be pulled back in, and you need to make sure there's not something more going on with that brain injury, because a concussion is a brain injury. Okay?
Hey Scott.
Yes.
Okay. It might be useful to make like magnets out of that symptom checklist to place in trainer's office, coach's office, and then even those really active families or those that are just.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. Because like I said, we want to do posters, but magnets would probably be more feasible, that we could get those out there. And we do, fortunately, we have a grant through ACL right now that is helping provide the funding for these things. So we have the money for the marketing aspect, which we know is coming next.
Keep talking about this thing as a book. We're talking about a booklet, 10 or 12 pages.
It's more than 12 pages. I'll tell you how long it is.
20.
Yeah. Oh, it says it on there, 20 pages. I'm old, I don't always know that. But it's not a long book. That's one of the things that I like about it. It comes in printed form, and then it'll come in digital form as well. The digital form, now everybody wants everything on their computer, right? But I still like to have a booklet in my hand that I printed this morning before I left the house, but it'll be both.
I want about 25 copies, and I want a training program for my trauma center. So,
Okay.
I'll give you my order.
And this is just
Scott, you said that the funding was from ACR,
ACL.
Okay, what is that?
See, you asked me a question.
American Community Living.
Yes, what is it? Did you say American Community Living? It's something, yeah.
Okay.
It's usually for aging. We do a lot for aging.
Yes, but fortunately, we got this and we can use some of that money for the marketing and the printing of these things.
Administration, working.
There you go. I'm just gonna go, I'm putting the wrong button, so that's why it's not working. I'm gonna go to, these are the states that it already exists in. So we do have some of the states that are similar to us, Alabama, West Virginia, and South Carolina. When we get this booklet, the first places we're going with this are going to be our most rural communities. We're thinking that if we can start in those smaller school systems, get them in place when we go to Jefferson County and we go to Fayette County and we go to Scott County, we can say, hey, look what this has done for these smaller school systems. Look what they're doing with it. And like I talked about before, those are the systems. There's nobody there for those kids. The chiropractor's the trainer. They sent an assistant coach to take all these classes about all these trainings in one day. What do they really have when they come back, right? It's not like Great Crossing or Scott County where they have 30 coaches. It's 4 coaches. One of them draws the short straw and has to go through these trainings. So that's what we're going to start. That's where we're wanting to start. Not only for just what we feel will be easier in the beginning, but those are the places that we feel like need this protocol in place for those school systems. Okay. Like I said, if anybody wants to contact me about this, I'll give you my number. It's 502-330-8519. I don't think I put that on the end. It was on the other one. But also, if you want to email me, it's donald.collins@ky.gov. The information, and also we have just a email that goes through Dale. It's dale.tbi@ky.gov, but it's in our brochures that are on the back table. Yes, ma'am?
So, computers in most people have to have the mandatory CPR training every 2 years, or why aren't they being, can this go with that? So you learn this?
Would love for it to go with that. That's why one of the trainings that we're trying to do is it's a videoed recording by Dr. McAvoy. That's an overview of the program.
Right.
30 minutes, you show it in an in-service. Some of the teachers, I'm sure, will get it, and some of them, they'll forget that they were there, right? They're not going to pay attention. But it's there. We want to see one of these booklets in every school in the state, right? Maybe, and like I said, probably with the school secretary, the school nurse, the school counselor, right? They hear about that kid with concussion. Oh, we've got this book. Let's work on it. Hey, this guy gave this presentation. I see his name everywhere on these posters, right? Let's give him a call, see what we can do. That's our hope. Yes, sir.
First question, have you reached out to the KHSAA, the Kentucky High School Athletic Association?
Yes. We've gotten some feedback from them. Chael has reached out primary to them. And then we kind of turned, let's get our book in our hand. Let's get these trainings in our hands so that when we go to them in a bigger capacity, we can say, look, it's done. Here it is. Let's make it work.
We worked with them on the return to play protocols, which was much more involved with athletics. This is, has more to do with the classrooms than return to the classroom. Not so much return to play. Not that they're irrelevant, but that is that distinction.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would just throw one other thing out that is sort of outside the realm of both athletics and classroom. One of the things that through the Kentucky EMS Association, I would look for opportunities to include this in the recertification process for first responders, EMTs, and paramedics. And again, I look at it from a standpoint, if I'm assessing a patient, the trick is whether that patient passes that protocol for me to say, and sometimes they still don't want to go to the hospital. But I think a better education of folks at all levels to be able to better determine that and get them primary care as well to help on the front end.
And I think, that's something to think about. How many of these kids never make it to an emergency room? Either they don't have the means to get there, or they don't think it's that bad, or it's that big a deal.
We've already included pediatric head trauma and domestic abuse, and those are all requirements everybody has to do, from EMRs through nurses, in different stages. So I think this would be a good fit to maybe work with KBs and see how we can make that part of the recertification process for everybody to get that primer on, just make sure everybody's on the same level set of diagnosis, and then what do you do if you've got that case where they need to go, and how do you either help convince them or use other means to make sure they get to care.
Right. And, I think what we're probably ultimately going to see is a lot of times the school is going to do more than they probably get at home. I mean, are these kids not getting what they need, or their moms or dads don't see it, they're not there to help, or it's not that bad? I mean, how many of us got hit in the head when we were little and our dad said, you're fine, right? Go back outside and play. I hit my little brother in the head with a golf club when I was little, on purpose. He probably had a concussion, but he never went to the hospital. So there you go. But, we want to get it out there as much as we can get it, because like I said, it's just a tool in all these folks' tool belts of what they can do to just make sure that the kids in Kentucky are getting proper care for these things.
So could the book you said was going to be digitalized on the site, could that training be digitalized on the site?
It will be.
And one of the marketing tools would be to say it's here, so every school district would know, so that,
Yeah, it's going to live on our website. It's also going to live on a YouTube channel.
You don't have to ask for it, nobody has to come. It's just anybody and everybody, whether it's recreational sports, school sports, teachers, your school districts, whoever has a vested interest in that, they know that there's somewhere to go to get some of that training, to find that resource.
Right.
And it kind of can be included in web-based training that people have annually, or when you have new people coming, on board. I just think, just to have to wait for something to come along, or to get a group together to share it, if it was just somewhere anybody and everybody could go. And when you Google it, it would just populate. Yeah,
it'll live on our CHF website. And then, like I said, I hope that it lives on a YouTube channel. I know if you look it up for other states, they have their trainings that are already out there. All right.
And if you don't mind, when you do have it finished, share it with us, and then we'll share it back out to the group.
Absolutely.
And also, I will share your contact information. I love the discussion we've had today. and the